Today I sat down with someone who needs no introduction in the Amazon space. Kevin King is his name, and he is truly the serial born into entrepreneur, having started businesses from the age of as young as 2 or 3, as he defines it, which he talks about in the episode. But just incredible to learn as to how he builds his flywheel, as I sort of allude to plenty of times in the episode. And, from $1 billion seller summit all the way through to product savants and the number of Amazon 8, 7, 9, however many figures you want, he's got him. And just truly a guy that believes in abundance from a mindset perspective. He's willing to share and understands the value of time investment. So had a great chat with him. I hope you guys get as much out of it as I tend to in this episode, and virtually every person that I'm so fortunate to sit down with. Hi, and welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I interview now successful professionals about their journey and try and garner insights onto any tips that can be applied to your business at home. Whether it's financial freedom or the exit of your company, wherever your journey may take you, the idea here is to simply learn from those who have done it before. I hope you enjoy and you get some value out of this. Buckle up and enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today and sharing some of the wisdom that you have gained over your career and everywhere you're heading. So welcome to an episode of Successful Scales.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, man. Awesome to be here with you, Young.
Yeah, no, we've spoken a little bit, and I am very familiar with you and all of the value that you give to the entire e-commerce and Amazon community at large. Before I dive into giving you all the praises, I'd love it for anyone who might not know who you are, just to talk to me a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to, and then we can really dive into the meat of it all.
Sure. Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life since I was 2 years old. I've never worked in a corporate environment, never worked for anybody really. When I was a teenager, I worked at McDonald's in a deli and delivered some pizzas, and those are only three jobs I've ever had where someone else was actually paying me a wage. So since then, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've been doing e-commerce since the 1990s, back when before Google existed, back when it was Yahoo and Lycos and Alta Vista and some of those guys. Started selling on Amazon in 2001. Run several of my own websites, e-commerce websites, some membership-based sites. Was involved in some television production for a while, and we had a e-commerce component to that. Started selling FBA on Amazon in 2015, and have several different businesses I'm either a part owner in or I own in that space, and continue to sell 7, 8 figures on Amazon. Through those businesses. Also have a business been doing 20 something years in the calendar space where we sell on Amazon, and also we have our own website. I do the spoken at probably about 60 events all over the world for e-commerce, primarily Amazon sellers. I host the Freedom Tickets. I created the Freedom Ticket course, which is a course for new sellers. It's part of Helium 10, and I have a partnership. Helium 10 is a big software company in the Amazon space, and they and I made a partnership to where I offer that course for free to anybody who has their software tool. I also do their advanced training called Helium 10 Elite. I run an event twice annually called the $1 Billion Seller Summit, which is once in person and once virtual, which is 7, 8, and 9 figure sellers. It's a very small, exclusive, high ticket event for really advanced Amazon sellers. And also have a company called partners in a company called Product Savants, where we help experienced sellers discover new product opportunities. So we will find something that's got a great opportunity, we'll source it, and then we basically turn it over to them to brand it and run with it.
Wow, my hand is sore. I've just been writing down all of the things here, mate. Just can I say what an incredible experience to start your career. I mean, 2 years old, what were you selling, or what were you doing at 2 years old as an entrepreneur?
Buying bubble gum. I think I might have been 2 or 3. I go to the grocery store and buy a little 1-cent bubble gum, and I come back and I'd sell it to the neighborhood kids for 2 cents or 3 cents or whatever. I would take in, I think, old oatmeal bottle, old oatmeal, like Quaker Oats oatmeal containers. They're like cardboard, and the top of them was kind of like a soft little cardboard, and you could actually make it into a little drum. So I would make those and sell those as little drums to the neighborhood kids. So yeah, I've been my father used to say that if there was a nickel around, I would smell it.
That's brilliant. So, I mean, I can't even ask you the questions about the decisions that you made to head down that entrepreneurial direction and choosing that life. It's like that life chose you from, from before you even realized what was going on in life, which is pretty unique in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah. I always kind of marched to my own drummer. I don't like to conform to what society says. I've always been a little bit of a rebel, I guess. Not I don't like to conform to what society says. Like, okay, you got it. I mean, I went to college. I have a degree in marketing from Texas A&M University. I did those steps, but I didn't go to my dad's dismay. I think I didn't actually go and take a job in the corporate world after that, with all the health benefits and the insurance and the 401ks and all that. I've never been someone that likes that. I like to dictate my own life, and I like my freedom, and that's what this lifestyle gives me. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work sometimes, and it's not really freedom. You're having to bust your butt, but the rewards are there. You can bust your butt for a year or two, and then take. I busted my butt for 10 years or so in one of my companies. In 2007, decided I wanted to travel. So from 2007 to 2014, so basically 7 years, I traveled the world, went to 92 countries, all 7 continents, and was still running some of my companies. As long as I had an internet connection and my laptop, I could dial in. So pretty much every month I was gone about 2 weeks of every month, either by myself or with friends or family or whoever wanted to come along. And I wasn't backpacking, but it wasn't, let's take off for a year and wander around like a nomad. It was literally, let's go to Egypt for 10 days. I'd go to Egypt and maybe stop in Turkey or something on the way back, and then come back, work in the office for 2 weeks, and then all right, next trip we're going to Peru, next trip we're going to Antarctica, next trip going to whatever it was. And so I did that for 7 years, and you can't do that if you were working a normal job. And I spent quite a bit of money doing that, and I wouldn't stay in the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton all the time, but I wasn't backpacking and staying in cheap hostels either. I hired local guides everywhere I went to take me around, which a lot of these people ended up becoming friends, just because you're spending 10 weeks with somebody, or 10 days with somebody, I'm sorry, and they're taking you everywhere around the country. At the end of the trip, you're eating a meal at their house, meeting their kids and their wife and whatever. So that was really cool. You get to see a different side. It's not just taking some sort of package tour type of thing. And it really changed me. I spent a lot of money doing that, and people were like, Kevin, that was silly. You were in your 40s when you were doing that. You should have just invested that money and put it in your retirement. It's $500,000 or whatever you spent. Just imagine what that could be now. I'm like, yeah, but just imagine if I didn't have all those experiences either. Or imagine if I get hit by a bus tomorrow and I can't walk up the Great Wall of China. No, I'm going to live my life now. I live in the present. I don't live in the past. A lot of people are always, remember when we did this, remember when we did that. I don't live in the past. I live in the now. And the past is the past. And I want to do those things when I can. And it changes me. You hear stuff like on the news recently, the riots and stuff, or the war, little mini war that happened in Israel, and in May. I have a different perspective on that than most people in the West that have never been to Israel or only know what they see on TV or what the TV wants to tell them, and have a different perspective. But by seeing it firsthand, I've been into the West Bank, I've been into Jerusalem, I haven't been to Gaza, but I've been there, and so I have a different perspective on it, and I can see how things get twisted. So it just changes your view of the world. It makes you a much more better person. I'd rather do that when I'm 40 than when I'm retired at 75, which is the normal way society says you're supposed to do things.
Yeah.
So that's just me, and I do the same thing in business. I don't do things the traditional way.
I mean, well, firstly, living through that war that just was here in Tel Aviv and experiencing it firsthand for sure. I mean, we're not going to have a whole episode about geopolitical situations, that's for sure. But definitely, I can deeply appreciate that, things are definitely not as they seem and how the media spins aspects of it. But I think that that's also one of the decision you made to spend 7 years traveling. The reality is that as someone who has spent the last 7 or 8 years living outside of Australia and, immersing myself in US culture and now in Israeli culture, through the Middle East, the best decisions I ever made in my life, because the perspective that you have on culture, on the bubble that you grew up in, on those sort of very insular experiences, you're forever changed. And so I would even argue that you wouldn't be as successful as you are today without having that level of perspective and understanding different cultures and having those experiences, I'm sure, without even getting into it just yet. But I'm sure that helped shape some of the business decisions you likely have made since.
Yeah, it has. It has, and it's opened up opportunities too by traveling. I mean, I have partners in some of my business that I would have never met if I wouldn't have been in China or Hong Kong or something. I have my wife is Colombian. I wouldn't be married to her if I hadn't traveled to Colombia during this. And let me just clarify that 7 years wasn't supposed to be, it wasn't a planned 7 years. It's supposed to be 1 year. When I turned 40, instead of going out and buying a nice Corvette or a new car or whatever, when you're 40, you're over the hill crisis or whatever, I decided to travel for a year. But that 1 year, I got so addicted to it, it turned into 7. And to me, life is about the experiences you have and the people you meet. It's not about how much money you have or how hard you're working, which is a lot of people get caught up in that. They get caught up in the I need to make more money. I mean, it becomes almost like a game, and they want to outshine their neighbor, or they want to look good to their friends or whatever, or look like their success. They need to feel that way, and that's success for different people is defined in different ways, and it's not always about money. You need a certain amount of money to live the life that you want. But I see this in e-commerce all the time. People are bragging about, I got a 7-figure business or an 8-figure business, or hit 10 million bucks. I'm like, good for you. But some guy over here that's got a little $600,000 business, he actually might be happier than you, because you got $10 million business, but you got 100 employees. You're dealing with all this crap. How much money are you really making? Are you robbing Peter to pay Paul to keep this thing alive? What's really going on versus this guy's got his little $600,000 business and he's taking off 150 grand a year, or 100 grand a year out of it, whatever the number is. He's happy. It doesn't have the stresses or the problems that you have. So it's not always about being bigger is not always better. And a lot of people, they lose sight of that.
Yeah, I think you touch on some very classic, almost entrepreneurial myths that exist, where people wear the number of hours that they invest in their business as a badge of honor. And, I did 80, 90, 100 hours a week. Look how hard I'm working in the hustle life. But, when you sort of break it down, what idiot starts a business to work 100 hours and have absolutely no free time? I absolutely loathe the days that I'm stuck in the office for 10, 12 hours, realizing that, there's moments in time when you're growing a business where, yeah, you've got to push and you don't have the infrastructure and you don't have the freedom that you might have 18 months, 24 months, 36 months down the track, depending on how quickly you can build that structure. Or, it looks to me, and we'll get into it in a second, but you're building a very intelligent flywheel of how each of the different businesses that you create helps, give it that extra push, from product savants to, is it the billion dollar seller summit?
Yeah, $1 billion seller summit.
$1 billion seller summit. When I'm sitting and talking to you as someone who's also trying to grow businesses and have impact and understand how I can work smarter, not harder, I'm also trying to connect the dots, saying, right, here's Kevin. He's living a life where he's spent 7 years off and on traveling, living his absolute best life. This is, for me, that's the aspiration. That's the goal, is how do I create the life that I want to live and work backward, not how do I waste my, my now mid 30s and early 40s away to eventually have a big pile of money and a Corvette and a Ferrari. I mean, who gives a shit if you're not going to enjoy the ride?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got every guy's probably dream life. I live in a penthouse in Austin. I have a really nice Porsche. I can travel wherever I want. I have a wife that's beautiful and 20 years younger than me. But all those things have come with, there was 10 or 15 years of hard work doing that. And then it's like not my wife, my mom says, all the past businesses I had when I was in my teens and my 20s and 30s was just preparing me for what I've been doing in my 40s and now I'm early 50s. She's like, that was your training for all that. What some people say the 20s and 30s are for learning, and the 40s and 50s are for earning. And there's probably some truth to that. And I work differently now than I used to. I work smarter, not harder, like you said. And sometimes, when you start a new company, like I started one last year and during the pandemic, and yeah, there's some long days, a lot of 12, 14-hour days for a couple months getting that thing going. But once it got rocking, I could cut that way back. You got to work, but a lot of the things that I did, I traveled and spoke at different events all over the world. I was invited to speak at different Amazon seller events, and you're meeting different people. You're laying the foundation for now what are business partnerships I have, and other things that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done that. So you got to work some, but you got to work smart. And so I deliberately for a year spent a lot of time on the road, traveling, flying to London, flying to different events in the US, speaking for free at a lot of these. And some of them, by the end of it, I was like, all right, you got to pay me now, because I know I'm putting some butts in the seat. So we got to figure out a way where you're at least covering my cost. But I did that, and it laid the foundation for everything I'm doing now with Product Savants, with $1 Billion Seller Summit, with the training that I'm doing. So if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I'm at now, and able to leverage all these relationships. And that's where a lot of business is it's who and the partnerships and the relationships that you build that can really determine your success, not how many employees you have or how much money you have. And that's really how I'm able to do what I do now. It sounds like a lot, but like my $1 Billion Seller Summit, it's 100 people max that can come to that. It's a $5,000 ticket, so it's an expensive event, and we do it nice. But because I have all these relationships in the space, I can send out a few emails. I know who the good speakers are, who the bad ones are, who I don't want, who I do want. Most of them I know personally, so if I invite them and say, hey, I'll cover your way, it's a 9% success rate of people saying yes, I'll be there. So that's the extent of my work, is 2 or 3 days of making, coordinating that. And then I have an event planner that I've worked with for years that I turn everything else over to him and let him do it. I'm not involved in all the micro details. If there's some major detail, he'll come to me, but he takes care of it, and I trust it. The same thing with, like with Product Savants. I met Steve Simonson, a partner in that, through all my travels and speaking and attending events. And he's been bringing stuff in from China for 30-something years. He's got a whole team in China. So why not leverage that? So my skill is finding new product opportunities. And so I spend my time doing that. And then I turn the product opportunity over to him and his team. They source it. And then he and I go through it and determine whether it's a go or a no-go. And that's it. So it's working smarter. The same thing with Helium 10. I have a course that I created called the Freedom Ticket. I created in 2017. And the reason I did it is because there's so much misinformation out there on Facebook. So many guys trying to sell people on selling on Amazon, showing their Lamborghinis and showing screenshots. And most of those people, I was just looking at them. I was like, these are just pure bullshitters. Most of these people haven't ever sold on Amazon. If they did for a couple of months. There's a couple of good people out there that are legit, but the vast majority are not. And I just got frustrated, and I'd see people posting on Facebook, oh, you should do this, and they just be parroting each other. And something that was a total falsehood would become a truth, or people would be like, yeah, never send traffic to Amazon without a landing page. I'm like, you're an idiot for doing that.
Yeah.
And it just became, and I got frustrated with that. So I was like, I'm gonna create a course. And when I was creating, I was like, creating a course is a lot of work, but it's a one-time thing. And so I look for things where I can duplicate it, create it once and sell it many times. And that's what a course is, if you do it right. And I create it, but then you got to market it, and you got to get affiliates, and you got to do all this stuff. It's like, why am I? That's a lot of work. Helium 10 already the biggest. Well, at that point they're the second biggest, but now they're the biggest in the space, in the entire space. got 1 million people plus or whatever downloaded their Chrome extension. Why not just go partner with them? I knew the owners of the company, and said, hey, why don't we just do this? We'll work out a deal that makes sense for both of us. And they said, sure. So now all I got to do is create it. I don't have to deal with any of the traffic, any of the audience, any of the customer service, any of the setting up the GoToWebinar links or pages or anything. They take care of all that. And it was a 50-50 deal back in 2017. So that I would have to give 50% away to an affiliate anyway to drive traffic in. It was a win-win for both of us. So it works smart. And so that takes all that load off of me. I don't gotta have to go out and hire a bunch of people to do all this and set up an office and have people in the Philippines and whatever, and try to completely control it. Just partner with smart people and focus on what you do best and maximize that rather than trying to own the whole shooting caboodle. And so and then that evolved from we were charging $9.97 I think at the time to now it's free if you have a Helium 10 membership. They pay me a fee for keeping it up to date and for shooting new versions every year or so. And it's a win-win deal. Could I make more money if I went out there and hustled it myself? Maybe, but it'd be a lot of hustle and a lot of work. Versus that time that I get paid enough for what I do from them for the partnership. Why not take that same time instead of trying to hustle that and make an extra $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever in my pocket? Put that same time and energy into a product savants or into something or $1 billion seller something and make even more money. So that's people sometimes ask me, Kevin, why don't you can I pay you to consult? And it's like, no, I don't really have time. I got my own businesses I'm running. I got my own stuff. Not really interested in consulting. And I got so many people asking me to do it. I said, okay, $1,000 an hour, and people are paying $1,000 an hour to get on the phone on a Zoom call like this and talk to me about whatever they had. What their questions were about Amazon. And I did that for a little while and I was like, this is actually not the best use of my time. Yeah, $1,000 an hour is a lot of money. And for some people, that becomes their business and that's what they do. But for me, if I had to look at it like, okay, if I take that same hour, which usually doesn't turn, it's not an hour, it's an hour and a half because you're talking to them longer, then they have some follow-up questions. So it usually involves a little bit more time than on the surface. But if I took that same hour or 2 hours and I would devote it to doing something that I can multiply, creating a course or put that in one of my businesses that I'm going to be able to sell, that same investment of time could multiply. So that same I'm giving up $1,000 an hour right now to do something for $0 an hour in one of my Amazon businesses, but that $0, that same hour is going to come back and pay me $5,000 or $10,000 2 years from now when we sell that company. So I have to look at things like that, and that's what a lot of people I think have trouble actually doing. It's looking at the big long-term picture.
I think there's a lot to unpack from that for people who are sort of approaching it. So, to me, you're someone that has the mindset of abundance, right? If it's not about a situation where money in my pocket is better than money in your pocket, it's that I'm happy to concede that I'm not going to make all the money, but if I invest my time wisely and I find the right partners where it's in our mutual benefit, then as a result, I'm able to achieve a whole lot more. Like just sitting here and sort of unpacking that in and of itself, it's the great equalizer time. We've all got 160 odd hours in the week. I mean, yeah, okay, you want to work 250 hours a week. That's your decision, right? But the reality is there's only so much time. So it's how can you create that leverage? And and I'm doing the math as well. I'm sitting here and I'm saying, right, well, Helium 10, I know you mentioned it, but just to reiterate, we're talking about over 1 million downloads as a Chrome extension. It's the most used tool in the space. So that, in terms of what that does for your credibility, working with the elite sellers, and then from there, parlaying that into the $1 billion seller summit, and then from that into the funnel around product savants, you start to build this incredible flywheel. And I feel like it's the word I use all the time right now, but I would say that for the smartest entrepreneurs, they're the ones who are really thinking laterally and saying, it's not about how can I make more money? It's how can I add more value to the existing relationships that I have, so that, if you want to talk e-commerce talk, how can I increase my cart size or my LTV of my existing audience, and how can I start to actually have bigger impact so that I'm not working harder or growing bigger teams. I'm simply getting more bang for my buck effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my approach is I want to enjoy life. You only have one life to live. And so I don't want to spend it all working all the time. I want to have some fun.
Well, hopefully we'll have a bit of fun. I'm assuming you're going to be at Prosper in about a month.
Yeah, I will be there. I will be there.
So yeah, so we'll definitely have to have a few beers over there. But before we get there, I got to ask you the question because my business partner Lippy, who you haven't met yet, I managed to convince him after he spent he's a big boy, he made his decision, but he spent 5 years in the military here in Israel. He's Australian. And before he went to college over here, he was going to study entrepreneurship. I said, listen, I'm growing this Amazon business. I was doing 2 million at the time. We took it to 5 million 12 months from when he joined. And, as a subsequent, output from that, I pitched him on the businesses that we've created today. Now, I took him away from education. What value did your formal education, because you said you did go and study in the end, how would you say that's had impact in your career as someone who is a serial entrepreneur from birth?
Very little. And I had a couple classes, an entrepreneurship class and a class with a lawyer that taught a class. I got some value from those, but there's a lot of classes. Texas A&M is a good university. I'm a huge fan of the university. I'm a huge American football fan of them. But the actual value of going to college, probably, I did it because that's what you're supposed to do. My father insisted that I do that. He had been saving as I was a child for, to pay for it and all that stuff. But I don't think it's necessary for most people, especially today. And if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or some very highly skilled, you're going to need some education. But for someone that really wants to run a business, there's nothing better than experience. There's nothing better than getting out there and just doing it, failing. I've had a bankruptcy. 1998, I declared bankruptcy. I've had the ups and the downs. It hasn't been a straight up curve. I've had to get very creative, and at times, writing a check, hoping the bank didn't cash it for 3 days, to provide that little float. And, I've done all that stuff. I had to get loans from basically the New York mafia. And, where just crazy, it's crazy stuff, that I've gone through to get to where I'm at. It's not a overnight success or anything like that. But I wouldn't trade any of that for anything, because those all shape you and form you and make you just that much better at business.
Yeah, and mate, you've got connections now with the New York mafia. Who doesn't want those, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what? We'll save that. We'll save that for those beers at Prosper. I'd love to hear that story. But yeah, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, when they're going through this journey, there is a lot of pressure that exists. And it's not just the self-imposed, like, I want to succeed, I have that hunger, I want to achieve. But, you mentioned as well, your father wanted you to go down that traditional route and, go to college, get a job, stock that 401k and have a nice pension and whatever that looks like. How did you sort of combat that, knowing that your family, and assuming, your family you're potentially close with? Yeah.
My father and I did not speak for a while. I was rebelling against everything that's he thought his child should do. I was an 8+ students in college and high school. I think my high school class was 800 and something people. It's a big high school. And I was like 8th or something in the class. Well, the last semester of my senior year, I got frustrated. I just got, I don't know, burned out or rebellious. And so I just quit going to some classes. Or I would take the test, calculus test, and I didn't feel like studying for it. So I just choose B for every answer on the form or whatever. And, ended up almost failing something. It knocked me down from like 8th to 23rd and upset my dad so much. But I was just rebelling against him and against the norms. And it caused issues. And so I was out kind of like on my own for a while. And my dad wasn't real happy about some of the things that I was doing. And refused to support it, or he couldn't go brag at the around coffee with his friends. Oh, what's your kid doing? What's your kid doing? So it created some uncomfortable stuff for him. But I mean, now everything's fine. But yeah, he still has concerns, and about. I don't think he quite. I mean, he's not entrepreneurial minded. He's very much, some people have that entrepreneurial mind. They're risk takers. They're willing to take the ups and the downs. Other people need that steady paycheck and that steady thing, and he's one of those. And that's, you need both of those kinds of people. And
yeah, you probably need more of those kinds of people than you need the people who are willing to take those ups and downs. And I think that's also, I mean, you really draw on a really interesting point here. I feel like, let's put the hustle life aside here for a second, and let's also talk about the fact that there is this almost like glorification of being an entrepreneur and having a startup and all this sort of like, sexiness about it. And I don't know, for me, it's not that at all. Like, it is so far away from what people sort of glorify it to be. And I think that, one of those decisions when you're going down that journey is that you have to be very okay to say, right, I am not going to have this steady paycheck that's going to come in every 2 weeks or every month or whatever the pay cycle is. I'm not, there is no 100%. I mean, there's not 100% security in that, as we all know, but it's more secure than this journey. So, I mean, you're pretty much born into it, right? So you've always lived it, but what are your sort of feelings or sentiments towards anyone who's going to go down that journey? What are the caution signs, or what are the things that you should be looking for?
Yeah, it is hard work. I mean, and a lot of people, they think, oh, I want to quit my job so I can work for myself. And a lot of times all they're doing is creating another job, and actually a harder job. And so a lot of people don't realize that. Then a lot of people, like you said, they think it's glorious. I see a lot of 20-somethings that want to start some company, and they think, I'm just going to start it. And a lot of these companies have no purpose. I mean, they say they have a purpose and a mission, but it's like, what is this? Nobody's going to buy this. I mean, you're going to get 10 people to buy this. And they go out and they get some funding from somewhere. And it's because some of these funding guys, they're rolling the dice. I've got a friend that invests in startups, and he puts a couple $1,000s into different startups, and he's got 600 of them or something right now, that he's got like $2,000 in each one. And he gets down to the ground floor. He's like, look, out of these 600, probably 95 of them aren't going to make it. I'm going to lose all my money. And that's okay. But maybe I'll have the next Uber or Lyft or, whatever. Next Facebook will be one of these. So I'm just rolling the dice. And so that's how some investors look at it. But the entrepreneurs who are starting this, they don't see it that way. They think they have some badge of honor, that it's some glorious thing. Yeah, I've created this cool new startup and this hottest new technology, and they don't realize what it really takes to make something work and to make it run. And so I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in the glory of it. It's nice to be the boss and nice to do what you want, but there's a downside to that too. You're working holidays and weekends and nights a lot of times. But at the same time, if you want to you can organize your schedule, and next month I'm taking 3 weeks and just basically taking off. But I'm not truly taking off. I'm still going to have to check the bank accounts, see if there's any disasters. But I'm not going to be doing, day-to-day work. But I can plan my schedule, like that's what I'm going to do, and organize everything towards that. When I traveled for 7 years, that's what I did. I organized my schedule to fit my lifestyle. What entrepreneurship can do for you is once you get over that hump and that initial hustle, is it can help you. You can craft your own lifestyle, which is much more difficult to do if you're working for somebody. And whatever that lifestyle is, it makes it easier to do that once you get to a certain point. And the Amazon business is probably one of the best opportunities of that in the last 100 years, to where you can actually do that, because Amazon does a lot of heavy lifting for you. You don't have to have warehouses and staff and all this. One guy in his pajamas with an internet connection anywhere in the world, sitting in his pajamas with an internet connection anywhere in the world, can run an Amazon business. And so it's created a lot of opportunities that didn't exist before, because you're basically doing what I was saying earlier, was giving you the Helium 10 example and the product savants example and so forth. You're just spinning off part of that load and partnering with somebody else that's doing it all for you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this, I think, last time we sat down. I said, if someone had no idea what they were doing and they wanted to make a buck and they had a bit of money to invest, obviously, you could very easily come to you, Product Savants and Steve Simonson, and effectively say, right, hook me up with the right product, through the deal structure that you guys have. Go to an incredible Amazon brand management agency, make sure that those products get to a fulfillment center, and you're away there effectively if you've got the money to invest, right? It's unbelievable what the Amazon ecosystem has enabled people to achieve with, I don't want to say little to no skill, because I think that it breeds a little bit of misconception as to like how easy it is to sell on Amazon. I think that a lot of people, I see the funniest posts on Facebook. You see the question that comes up, I would say like once a week, is I've got $10,000. Do I invest in crypto or do I invest in Amazon? And I don't understand. Like, if you're writing that question, there is absolutely no way that you should be putting even 1 cent of your money into an Amazon operation, because they couldn't be further away from each other.
Yeah, there's a lot. Most people that try to sell on Amazon fail. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but you hear statistics about, Amazon, 6 million people worldwide open to Amazon, or 6 million seller accounts on Amazon, or whatever the number is. And there's 1 million open last year. But most of those are not selling much. And the vast majority of the people that take a course or they try to sell on Amazon, most of them don't succeed. The vast majority don't succeed. It's because they're either not taught right, or they don't have the right mindset. And it does take a skill set. Either it takes a team or experience, or you got to wear a lot of hats. You got to know a lot about a lot of things. And a lot of these people that are pitching people on courses and selling on Amazon leave a lot of that out. They just show the cool little, look, I bought this for $2 on Alibaba, I'm selling for $20. And they don't even tell you the right numbers. I made an $18 profit. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
They leave everything else out in the middle. And they make it look good because that's what they're doing, is to sell you a course, or just take well, these done for you services that are out there. If your guy that has $10,000 can dump it into that, most of those are a waste of money too. The real money in Amazon, selling on Amazon right now, at least for the next few years, it has been for the last couple of years, is not actually in running the business, because it's a cash intensive business. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, is how cash intensive it is. You may have a $500,000 profit on paper, but I can guarantee you can put 500 grand in your pocket, because you're having to constantly reinvest that to keep the flywheel, as you said, going, and the new inventory coming, or adding new inventory. But where you can make money is this aggregator culture that's popped up around the whole Amazon business. Especially, it's been around for 5 years, but in the last year, it's really gotten a lot of press. And there's 60, 70 some odd companies now that have raised, I think, collectively into the close to 3 billion with a B dollars collectively, to actually invest in Amazon businesses. And so that's where the opportunity is. If someone like yourself or me or the audience build something up where you can make a little bit of money as you're doing it, but build it in such a way that in 2 to 4 years from your start, you can actually flip this for hopefully millions. And that's where you can get the best leverage. And so if you come to it from that mindset versus, I need to quit my corporate job and replace my $100,000 a year income, and in the next 3 months, it's like, no, keep your corporate job if that's what's covering your bills. Do this on the side and at night until it reaches a point where you can actually pay your rent. Then maybe consider leaving your corporate job, or maybe not. But grow it to a point where it's throwing off that $500,000. And in today's world, you could sell that for $1.5 million to $2 million, probably, with the competition that's out there in the aggregator space right now, to one of these aggregators that will take it over from you. You've proven that it works, and they'll blow it up. And sometimes they'll give you a piece on the backside. So you can take a lot of chips off the table right then, and then reinvest that and do it again, or take it and do something else, or where you want. And that's where the true opportunity is. And a lot of people that are getting into it, they don't think about that. They don't think about that long-term play, to where, look, it's selling on Amazon is not necessarily make money now business. It's to make money in 2 to 4 years from now business. And they come in undercapitalized, or they go into they don't understand how to analyze competition, and to analyze risk, and analyze where your true cost of selling, not just the basic 3 or 4 things that always get added into a spreadsheet, but there's 25 other things that you got to consider too, that can really cut into your profits. That's where a lot of people drop the ball. And then it becomes, it's like you said, it's a lot of work. You got to wear a lot of hats, or you got to have people that you're partnered with that can do that for you, or that you've hired.
So you team me up here perfectly, Kevin. I got two two areas that I'd love to talk to you about. So the first is the last thing you said is about having the right partners. Now you have, I honestly lost count of how many businesses you have currently and also how many you've had over the years. But and then I want to step back into the aggregated chat because I'm particularly interested, and it's something that we've been chatting about, and I've got some questions, and I feel like you're the man who'll have some of the answers I'm looking for. But on the partners perspective, when you're starting a lot of these businesses, how many of them do you go into when you have a partner, and how are you also making those assessments? Is it from a perspective of, I service this need, like I'm very operationally savvy, they're great on the sell side, or like how are you making those decisions?
Well, yeah, it's exactly that way. I mean, I'm very good at at finding product opportunities for Amazon, analyzing the keywords and the data and using the tools. And just it's like a sixth sense, all right, like, if you do this and this, I could see the big picture around something, or the creativity that might be needed to, like, oh, if we change this and change that, this will make it really good. But then on the sourcing side, contacting the factories and stuff, yeah, I can do that, but that's not my cup of tea. So on Product Savants, I partner with Steve, who has a whole team that does that. And then Steve has a lot of experience bringing stuff in. He knows a lot of the regulations and rules of different things. If it's got wood, we got to meet section 13.2, import code or whatever. He knows all that stuff. So that's a good partnership where I can focus on what I do best. It's like if you're on an American football team, you're the quarterback. It's not also the wide receiver. It's not also the running back. You got to focus on what you do best, and then get a team around you. So sometimes that team you can hire that team. You can get VAs, or you can get other people and either train them up or hire people that already have those skills. But for me, that's the harder way. And yeah, you may have more control, I guess, to a degree, and maybe you have more percentage of the company or something like that. You have a hire, but to me, if I have 80% of the company and I have a bunch of VAs and employees doing it, am I better off having 80% of a company and letting them do something, or partnering with someone like Steve, where we're 50-50, and instead of having a $1 million business, we have a $5 million business. And so 50% of a $5 million business is a lot more than 80% of a $1 million business. So you see this on, I don't know if you ever watch Shark Tank or Lion's Den or anything.
Yep.
So guys come on there all the time. Hey, I'll give for 10%. Looking for $500,000 for 10% of my company. And, the sharks like what they're doing. They negotiate. Well, I'll do it for 35%. I'll give you $500,000 and they're like, no, we can't give up that much. It's good to negotiate, of course, but then they negotiate it back and forth, and it's at 30%, say, at the end. And like, no, I just can't give up. This is my baby. I can't give up 30%. I'm like, you're a fool. You're a freaking fool. And a lot of people, they get too close to their business or their baby, or they don't quite understand where key relationships can make all the difference and be worth a lot more at the end of the day. And so that's the same thing, like I gave the example of helium-10 and others. That's how I look at it, and how it's critical. And a lot of people just don't get that.
Yeah. And that makes a whole lot of sense to me. The sum greater than the parts, and looking at how you can strategically align with the right people who have the same mindset and complementary skill sets really enables you to achieve a whole lot more. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I want.
Another example, that's one of my companies. Well, I have two. One of them's we started it last year and it got funded last year, but the pandemic, we decided to wait to launch the products until this year. So we're about to launch them here in the next month. But these are somebody that I met through my speakings. So the way the trail works is, I was in Hong Kong speaking at an event. They saw me speak. They came up to me and said, "Hey, we would like to talk to you about maybe a partnership with something." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." A few days later, we're having lunch, and they're like, "Hey, this is what we do. We're experts at sourcing. We have this company, and we would like to help find products, and maybe we have some guys that have a little bit of money that might be able to put into it. we'd like to start an Amazon business. And I just wasn't totally comfortable at that point, going with these guys. But then, so we kept the relationship going. And about a year later, they said, hey, we have this opportunity for this products made out of recycled ocean waste. We have this exclusive factory. They do stuff for Adidas and Nike, and they do this and this. And like, okay, now we have something. Rather than just me going and finding something on Alibaba and putting our logo on it, and you get some guy that's got a little bit of money. Now we have a true moat and a true differentiator. Let's talk. So we started talking. Like, these guys know how to source it. They got the good connections. They also are ex-bank. They used to work for JP Morgan Chase, so they investment banking. So they know a lot of people that have money. It's like, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to need $1 million to launch this company, plus a line of credit. Like, oh, we got the guys. So they're coming to the table with the people that have the money. They have those relationships. Those money people trust them. Then we form a company together. I'm good at the marketing side, the Amazon side, the creating the brand side. They're good at the sourcing side and bringing the money. So it's a good synergy all the way around. And then we hire out what we need. If we need logo design or we need a website, rather than having a staff sitting here doing all that, we just go into Upwork or one of the places and hire VAs or someone. In some cases, we've used people in the past. We know who to use, and we just get those things done on a case-by-case basis rather than having full-time regular employees. And then as far as we have one VA on that just helps, some of the social media and some of the customer service. But if you do things right, you don't have a lot of customer service. And I personally like to be involved in the customer service when we first launch, because I want to see firsthand what people are saying and to be able to fix it. And then I'll back off of that and pass that on. It's not the best use of my time, but in the beginning, it's a good use of my time.
Yeah. Jeff would love that.
So that's how we do it. And then, this one company, when we came into it, we're like, it's a great opportunity, but let's build it to sell. So we contact like a group like Northbound Group, who helps a lot of Amazon sellers sell. They come in usually after the fact, after you've been selling for a few years, and take a look at your books and make some strategic plans and some forecasts and help you kind of get all your ducks in a row to actually sell to one of these aggregators or whoever. But we're like, why don't we start with them from the beginning? So we brought them in from the very beginning. They've got a small little piece, and they did a lot of work up front, forecasting and setting up the operating agreements and everything correctly, so that because our goal on this is not to build this company and manage it for the next 10 years, it's to build it for 2 to 4 years and sell it, and then go on to the next one. And so that's so we've done it from the ground up, organized it from the ground up, which is not necessarily what most people would do.
Yeah, you've reverse engineered the aggregator model, and when I do stop recording, we're going to have a bit of a chat in the few minutes between, because got something cooking up on the sidelines here as well that's aligned with that strategy. So yeah, very, very smart. So before I let you go, the other question I had for you is, on the aggregator space, how long do you think this bubble is going to last? So we know that it's been around for 5 years, and you know what? You tell me, how long? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first guys was that was doing this happened to be here in Austin, and he since it didn't work out, so they since gone under because they didn't realize how much they bit off a little bit more than they could chew, and they didn't realize how hard this actually is. So some of these guys, like your Thrasios, have it figured out. They got 600-800 people, whatever the number is, working for them. They've kind of got a well-oiled machine, and they'll probably survive. But a lot of these other smaller ones are not going to survive. I think you're going to see some consolidation. I think you see some of these just flat out go out of business. I always remember a story of a friend of mine. This was before the big aggregator rush, 4 years ago. He sold. He had a supplements business, and he sold it. It was doing like $30 million a year on Amazon, and he sold it for a lot of money. And after he sold it, 6 months later, the buyers were coming back to him saying, "Hey, can you help us out? Sales have tanked. We don't know what the hell we're doing." And they actually paid him to come back in and try to reverse it back up and to help him. And so a lot of these aggregators don't have experience. They're coming from a different world, corporate world. They got a lot of money, but they don't have experience. And they think, well, it's no big deal. We'll just hire it. We'll just hire the experience, and good luck. Because most of the people that are running these Amazon businesses successfully, they don't want to come work for you. I think Thrasio has been able to convince two people, I think they told me, of the companies that they bought. They make the offer to everybody, but only two of them have actually said, yeah, we'll come work for you, of the companies that they bought. Most of them, they don't want that. That's not why they're doing this. They're entrepreneurs. Like we talked about earlier, it's a different mindset. They don't want that corporate job. So finding good people that have experience in this is difficult. And so that's part of the challenge that I think a lot of these smaller ones are going to have. And then people that are selling to these aggregators, and if there's a big payout on the backside, if they're giving you, say, 60-70% up front, and the rest of it's on earnouts, like, well, we're going to double your sales, and you're going to get X percentage of the profits for the next 3 years. I'd be careful on those. You need to make, if you do that kind of deal, that's great if it works out, but you need to make sure that whatever that money is you get up front, and that first payment when you close, you need to be happy with that.
Yep.
And consider that's the only money you're ever going to see. And if you're satisfied with that, then okay, take the deal. If you're not satisfied with that, be very careful. And I think a lot of them are going to go under. So I think the market also for the companies that they can buy, I asked the guys at Thrasio this, and they say, oh no, there's plenty of them. But I think it's actually more limited what most think. Or they're going to have to change their business model. Because if you look at Amazon statistics, I don't know what the ones were for 2020. I know for 2019, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 businesses on Amazon worldwide are doing $1 million or more in sales. Now that's 20,000 worldwide. Some of those, probably half, I don't know exact number, but a third to half of those are big companies. That's Nike and Adidas and Procter and Gamble and whoever. Those people are the aggregators are going to buy. So I think immediately you can cut that market that in half. So there's 10,000 of these potential businesses. How many of those people are willing to sell, or how many of those people are actually profitable? A lot of them are they're generating cash flow, but they're not very profitable. They're not very well managed. So they may not be so attractive to buy, or they're in high risk categories, or they're constantly having to evolve new products. So I think you're going to reach a point in a few years where there's less and less of these qualified companies to buy. And you can see the aggregators that, like the Thrasios, that have bought up enough of them, they're going to start owning some spaces, and it's going to be even harder. We all talk about now in the space, it's the Chinese sellers that have the advantage, and you come in and do black hat and whatever and crazy stuff. I think you're going to see in a couple of years, it's going to be the aggregators. They're not doing black hat, but the aggregators are the ones that are controlling aspects of this. And it's going to be harder for the individual seller. And so I think the time right now is probably about 2 years. 2 to 3 years of some pretty good times, unless something happens in the market, or there's a world war or some craziness, another pandemic or something.
Yeah, you just don't know these days, right?
Without any of those kind of world-shattering events, I think it's about a 2 to 3 year good run. It's always going to be here. There's always going to be 10 years from now, you're going to sell your Amazon business if you want to somebody. But the good run right now, where the values are inflated, and there's a lot of dumb money that has to be deployed, is probably the next 2 to 3 years top.
Yeah, that's sort of where my head's at too. So nice to hear that validation. Well, Kevin, I'll let you go. I know you got to run. Well, I mean, I at least definitely do as well. So I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I've got to say it's been such a pleasure. I know we hit record and I said, well, we'll try and get 30, 40 minutes out. And before I look up, we've got 2 minutes until the hour is up, and here we are. And I could go for another 10 hours. So, mate, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a real pleasure. If anyone does want to, attend $1 Billion Seller Summit, if they're qualified, product savants, and anything in between, what's the best way for them to find out about all the many businesses and ways in which you might be able to support them?
Yeah, probably the best way is just to follow me on Facebook. I'm not on LinkedIn or any of those, but if you just look up Kevin King on Facebook, I think it's, look at my ugly picture, you know who I am. That's probably the best way to keep up with. Now he's lying to you if you're not watching on video. That's probably the best way to actually get a hold of him, or to see what the latest. I'll usually post it there.
Awesome. Well, get him on Facebook, guys. Again, Kevin, thank you so much for sitting down. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor having you.
No problem. Glad to be here, man. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.